Hello everyone, this is Dr. Muhammad Abrar and welcome back to our lecture of chapter 9. We are diving into a business and the cost of production. So this chapter develops a crucial cost concept that are foundational for analyzing the four basic market models in upcoming chapters. As you know, we have divided this chapter into three parts. So in the first part, I have already explained the short-run production relations, and in the second part, we had discussed the short-run production cost. Today, we will delve into a long-run production cost where all inputs are variable and analyze economies and diseconomies of scale. So let's kick off with a deep dive into today's discussion about long-run cost concepts. The concept of long-run cost centers on a firm's ability to adjust all the input factors, including the size of its production facilities or plant size, or maybe the labor. So all land, labor, capital, all the factor of productions will be variable. Unlike the short run, where certain inputs like the plant size remain fixed. The long run allows the firms to vary all inputs according to their optimal level of production efficiency. This flexibility is crucial as it enables the firms to achieve economies of scale or scope, potentially lowering the average total cost per unit of output compared to the short run. So the long run average total cost curve represents the average cost per unit of output when all inputs can be adjusted optimally, reflecting the most efficient combination of resources given the scale of production. In contrast, the short run average total cost vary depending on fixed input constraints, such as the different plant size, may be affected cost efficiency as well. Any number of short-run optimized size cost curves can be constructed. So the long-run average total cost curve is made up of segment of the short-run cost curves of the various plant size from which the firm might choose this. Like we have a average total cost 1, average total cost 2, 3 from the short run, and etc. So the long-run cost curve is also called the planning curve. Each point of the bumpy planning curve shows a lowest unit cost attainable for any output when the firm has had time to make all desired changes in its plant size. Just have a look at this curve. So the long run average total cost curve just involves the short run average total cost curves. If the number of possible plant size is vary, like we have average total cost 1, 2, 3, and so on, the long run average total cost curve approximates a smooth curve. So economies of scale followed by the diseconomies of scale. So the portion when the average total cost curve is declining representing the economies of scale, that will be followed by the diseconomies of scale when the average total cost curve in the long run is increasing. That causes the curve to be a U-shape. Economies of scale. So economies of scale refers to the idea that for a time larger plant size will lead to a lower unit cost. An increase in input where there are economies of scale will lead to more than proportionate increase in output. It can be a labor specialization that leads to an economies of scale because it make use of specialized skill. Proficiency is gained as the worker concentrate on one task and the time is saved. It may be the managerial specialization which lead to economies of scale because managers can manage more workers with no increased cost, and the managers can specialize in the respective area of expertise. Or it can be efficient capital that leads to economies of scale because the high volume production wants the expensive large scale equipments, and other factors that lead to economies of scale because the cost such as design, development, and advertising are spread over the larger quantities. And when we can say the constant return to scale will occurs On the other hand, when the average total cost curve is constant over a variety of the plant size, when there are a constant return to scale, an increase in input will result in a proportionate increase in output. On the other hand, if we talk about the diseconomies of scale, that may occur if a firm becomes too large, as illustrated by the raising part of the long run average total cost curve in the previous diagram. As the firm expands over the time, the expansion may lead to a higher average total cost. With diseconomies of scale, an increase in input will cause a less than proportionate increase in the output. So the reasons that diseconomies of scale may occur, the first can be a difficulty in controlling and coordinating large scale operations, maybe a large bureaucracy that leads to communication problems. Workers may feel alienated that and therefore may not work efficiently, or it can be shrinking or work avoidance may be easier in the larger firm. Like if the firm is too large and the manager doesn't know their employees and employee doesn't have any interaction with the manager, so there will be a communication problem, or maybe the coordination problem, such as if there is any machine required a repair, but it's a lengthy procedures to get it repaired because there are multiple departments involved in that repairing or replacement. So that will affect the efficiency, it will increase the cost. So all these factors can lead to diseconomies of scale. Minimum efficient scale, MES, and industry structure. MES refers to the lowest level of output at which a firm can produce its goods or services at the lowest long run average cost possible. So when a firm operates at its MES, it achieves optimal economies of scale, meaning it produces goods at the lowest possible average cost per unit. So that's why the MES plays a very crucial role in determining the structure of industries, particularly identifying the natural monopolies. A natural monopoly occurs when a single firm can produce the entire output of the market at the low cost than multiple firms producing the same output collectively. So this situation arises because in industry where economies of scale are substantial and continues, the cost continue to decrease as the production sales increases. Therefore, in natural monopoly scenarios, the long run costs are minimized when a single firm serves the entire market demand. Just have a look at the average total cost curve in the long run, where we have a extended constant return to scale. So this is the long run average total cost curve. This is showing industry with an extended range of a constant return to scale. So these industries will be populated by firms of many different sizes. Small and the large scale producers will coexist and be equally successful. So here in this diagram, MES will occur at an output of Q1. So the first part, that is representing economies of scale when the average total cost curve in long run is declining. In the middle portion, the green highlighted area, that's representing a constant return to scale, representing when the firms having a constant return to scale. I mean, it's increasing proportionally. And the last stage when the diseconomies of scale representing increase in the average total cost curve in economies. And MES in this diagram, in this scenario, will occur at Q1. If we look at this diagram where we have only two possible options, economies of scale and diseconomies of scale, so the industries with economies of scale over a wider range of output will lead to a new large scale firms. So the long run average total cost curve is lowest only when there is a larger output. So in this situation, the MES will occur at that particular point. And after that, the diseconomies of scale will be started. There is another scenario when economies of scale are exhausted quickly. So the economies of scale curve is a very steeper and the curve turns back substantially after a brief downward slope. It indicates that the industry or firm within it face challenges in achieving the significant cost reduction as output increases beyond a certain point. So here the minimum efficient scale occurs at a very low level of output. So in such scenario where the economies of scale are present but exhausted quickly, so the average total cost curve initially slopes downward due to increasing return of scale. So this phase typically allows the firm to produce more output at the lower average cost as they benefit from factors like specialization, efficient use of resources, and spreading the fixed cost over a larger production volume. And however, beyond a certain point, so the firms experience a diminishing return to scale or even a diseconomies of scale, causing the average total cost curve to return upward again. So this turning point often marks the minimum efficient scale at that point, where the firm achieves its lowest possible average cost per unit of the output. In the described scenario, the MES occurs at a relatively low level of output, indicating that the industry or firms within its face limitations in achieving the significant economies of scale. So as a result, there are numerous small firms or small producer operating at or near their MES, each unable to achieve the substantial cost advantages through the scale expansion. Lastly, if we talk about the application and illustration of the cost curves, so let's suppose rising gasoline price will create a short-run cost such as average variable cost, marginal cost, and the average total cost, all to rise for the firms that use this kind of energy as an input. For example, if I give a very simple example for the FedEx company. So the FedEx is a courier company that use mostly such kind of fuel in their vehicles, in their aeroplanes. So substantially cost increase, whereas the firm that do not for cost will be increased for the FedEx. Whereas the firms that do not need to the transport products physically will not be affected by the rise in the fuel cost. So similarly, the startup firms have been successfully by lowering their average total cost curve as they increase the output and achieve economies of scale. So this is spread out research and development and advertising cost over a larger number of units. The best example for the successful startup, you can see the Starbucks, McDonald's, Microsoft, and the Google. And if we talk about the version stamping machines that can make as many as 5 million auto parts per year. So although the machine is expensive, like $30 millions cost, it can make parts quickly and cheaply. So this machine is only wanted in factories with very large scale of productions. This would be for those companies that can achieve the economies of scale by using the low cost productive machines. Another way, if we talk about the daily newspapers have experienced decrease in advertising revenue. So falling the subscription and increase in their average fixed cost. So the advertising revenue has shifted to the internet nowadays. And the daily newspaper may be the thing of the past. No one is reading, no one is using in everyone having access to the digital news nowadays. So if they raise the price of the newspaper, they will sell fewer papers, but then the average fixed cost will rise too. And lastly, if we talk about a commercial aircraft that requires a large scale production, which easily achieve the economies of scale and require a fewer production plants. You will not see a thousands of the production plant producing the aeroplanes. There is a only limited production plants. That's a very large and big production plants producing the aeroplanes. And meanwhile, if we talk about the concretes, that required a small scale production And therefore, there are thousands of the plants and the outlets from where you can get the concretes. That's all for today's lecture. If you have any question, comment, or feedback, feel free to share them in the comment section below. Also, if there are specific topics you would like me to cover in future lectures, just mention them in the comment section. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more informative lectures and learning content. Thank you for being a part of this virtual gathering. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring.